What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into Valley Studios for another awesome video. Now, we are in the processes of working on the Peregrine Falcon sculpture. This is an awesome commission piece that is going to be going to Canada. Super exciting. Now, we wanted to make this so that I can reproduce these pieces in the future if I ever do want to. Now, if you want to go back in the previous playlist and check out all of the other videos that I've released up to this point, I highly recommend that you go do so. There are awesome long-form content videos that you can see the entire processes of what it takes to create something of this substantial size. Now, today we are going to be working with Smooth on Smooth Cast 300. Now, that is a bright white plastic, and we're going to be using both Part A and Part B to do a slush hollow cast of this sculpture. Now, in previous videos, we had used XPS foam to create the actual kind of like the framework for us to build up our monster clay. We used Monster Maker Ink monster clay to create the overall bark, rock, and dirt texture to create the base of the Peregrine Falcon. So if you want to go back, make sure you check out the sculpting process as well. It's very fun. We use some bark texture to create the texture all the way around the actual stump itself. We made sure to blend the dirt line as well as the actual stump root as they're coming up out of the dirt. Very cool, and we were able to capture that in this latex mold. Now, I'm using latex mainly because it's cheaper as opposed to silicone when you're working with things of this size. Of course, you may need to make sure that you make your latex as thick as possible in certain areas to get that durability that you're looking for. But I really wanted the ability to, in the future, cast this out of possibly concrete. Now, that leads us into the second part. Now, the polymer plastics we're using today and the latex really don't necessarily go well together. This really does stick to the latex quite a bit. So we need to make sure that when we are using latex in a mold like this, that we don't want to have it deteriorate early on in its usages. We need to make sure that we use a demolding spray. Now, this is a Kraken Bond. It's the first time that I've used this actual brand, and it came in a 2-pack off of Amazon. You can check that out in my Amazon affiliate listed below if you would like to check this out and try it for your molds in the future. Pro Lube silicone lubricant for professional quality, anti-static, anti-corrosive. Do not leave residues. That's a big thing because we don't want residue sticking to this, as well as on the actual castable item itself. That way we don't get any kind of like separation in the paint layers later on in the process. Where sometimes if you use something like this, like a grease-like texture, it can repel paint, and we don't want that. Removes moisture, very important, especially when you're working with something this deep. We're not really going to have to worry about it today, but in the future when we're doing the concrete molds, this will help repel the water of the concrete away from the actual latex, creating a small barrier or membrane lining inside of it, which makes the release of the mold at the end process of that easier. If that makes any sense. And it, of course, is non-toxic. Now, just because it's non-toxic does not mean that it doesn't have a stinky smell to it. And that's just why I'm not doing it inside the work studio. So we're out here in the workshop, and I'm in an open area. Got the fan going just to get some of the stinky air out of here. I just don't want the stinkiness inside the house. It is an aerosol type can, so it does have a little bit of a residue smell. So there it is, Kraken Bond, super cool. We're gonna try it out and see how it is. I also have some disposable cups. I prefer these disposable cups as opposed to say like a measuring cup. I don't feel bad about throwing these away after every single pour if I wanted to. Normally what I will do is I will take 2 of these and I will go ahead and label those as A and B, and I'll pour these into these and then pour those into a singular cup. That way I'm only wasting a small amount of them as I'm burning through this. We're going to be making this into a slush cast, which means that we're going to pour in small amounts of our medium into this, and my goal is to create at least maybe a 1/4 inch to an inch in thickness at the thick portion. So around the bottom of our mold here, around the top of the stump area, and then around the sides, it can get a little bit thinner. I also plan to potentially add some steel rods into the liner of said mold, which means that this will take an extra day to set up. So what we'll do is we'll create a nice jacket on the inside of the latex for us to build up on top of. We'll do that until all of the textures are smoothed out and we no longer see any of those bark textures. That allows us to know that we've got the details of the bark texture locked into position. And then I'm going to go ahead and attach those steel rods. Not many of them. It's more so not to add strength to the item, but it's also more so to add weight to it, so that if the sculpture in the long term were to get bumped or the table gets bumped, this portion of it's weighed down so that the whole structure doesn't just topple over. Because as you can see, as we turn this up here, this is just the stump, right? This is substantially large. Look how tall it is. It's at least a foot tall, just the stand or just the stump portion. Pretty cool. The actual peregrine falcon is going to be perched on this side. We have a lot of raised textures over here. We have the splits on the top of the log. We have the bark coming down to the rock and the dirt foundation. If you want to go back and see the sculpting video, I highly recommend you go do so before you get to this, because it really gives you an idea of what the overall shape that we're working with is like before we begin that process, okay? Now, one thing that you'll notice here is that I had made the monster clay over a foam and aluminum foil base. I remember telling you it was going to be reusable. So I was able to easily, I wouldn't say easily, but meticulously remove my monster clay from the aluminum foil, remove the aluminum foil from the actual foam core, and the foam core will go into a shelf here into the studio. If I ever want to reuse it for another project in the future, then I already have that core foam piece built out for future usages. Okay guys, so what we're going to do now is we're going to begin the process of actually making our slush cast. So what we need to do is first I need to go ahead and layer in some Kraken. I like the name Kraken just because it sounds kind of badass when I'm talking about it. Let's layer in the Kraken into this awesome mold here. So we're going to flip it over here. Now because I'm doing a slush cast and not a level full cast, it does mean that it's going to be a lighter weight as opposed to a solid, pure cast. A solid piece is going to take substantially more than a gallon kit of smooth on, which means that the price would substantially go up because you just want to create the overall best quality. But if you need multiple packs of this, it really does drive the price up quite a bit. This is the most expensive portion of this entire project. And in total, just in this mold alone, I've probably spent about $100 or so. I would say about maybe $40, $50 in gypsum. I'll use a little bit of plaster of Paris as well in the jacket. And then the actual latex is about $50 to $60 as well with free shipping, and you can find that on my Amazon affiliate list. This is over $100 in plastic pours. So Smooth On is actually the best brand. I love them. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. However, their product is absolutely bar none the best that I've run across as far as just easy pouring plastics, okay? So if you're looking to get into this, this is the brand that you need to buy. This is the one I highly recommend. I'm not saying you can't try other brands, but I'm just saying this is the easiest one that you're going to find out there. Another thing that you'll notate here is I do already have bungee cords around the outside jacket of my plaster pour. Now, I did have a mishap and one of the sides actually cracked. So the top portion here is cracked, as well as there's a crack down the center, and that's even after I did some patchwork on the exterior with another layer of gypsum. I have bungee cords. These are adjustable bungee cords that I purchased from Walmart, and they are actually holding the sides as well as binding the two pieces together. It's very self-explanatory. But for the most part, my goal here is that the seam between the two pieces of latex, because there is a seam in here, guys. There is a seam in here. I want that seam to be as kind of non-visible as possible. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to spray in the Kraken. The Kraken! We're going to spray the Kraken in here. And I really want to focus on that seam. So if any of this were to get down in that seam, it will help with the release process later on. And if I need to shave down because a little bit of plastic got in between the two molds, then that's completely okay. But I don't want it to adhere to the latex to make it extremely hard for it to pull apart. So this needs to also settle into that crack or the seam in your latex just a little bit, okay? So what we're going to do here, guys, I'm going to go ahead and zoom you in. Let's go ahead and get this spray in here, and then we'll take you back out for a little bit while we do the first few slush pours. and then I'll kind of bring you in, just give you a real idea of what it looks like as far as in the item as the plastic is slushing around. It's very self-explanatory, and it's very hard to record some things like this because it's just me, myself, and I out here. But as you can see, it is going to be a big cast, and we're going to go ahead and make it happen. So let's go ahead and zoom you in, guys, and let's get this spray in this mold. Okay, guys, so I put a piece of spare plywood underneath this, and that's just so I don't get any kind of like overspraying too much on the actual countertop here that I eventually want to make that island out of. But here it is. We're going to go ahead and use the Kraken Bond Pro Lube Silicone Lubricant. And we're going to go ahead and spray this in very generally into all of the nooks and crannies. So I'm going to go ahead and release this bungee cord for just a moment here. Let it lay up there. And let's go ahead and get this into position here. Now it does smoke out there a little bit because it is a aerosol. And it's not truly as stinky as I would have thought. When I first sprayed it outside and I just kind of smelt it, it smelled kind of potent. But as I'm sitting here in the outdoor area, I'm not really too bothered by it. I probably could spray this inside, but it is leaving a lot of dust, like smoky residue, like aerosol behind. All right, so with that done, guys, I'm going to go ahead and redo my bungee cords here. Just like that. So as I just stated a moment ago, the Kraken Bond is actually not as stinky as I had originally thought. I sprayed it last night outside and just kind of smelt it, and it smelled kind of potent at first, like an aerosol. It's actually not as bad as I thought, but I do think that in the future I'll probably just wear like a just normal dust mask, because I feel like because I was spraying into a hollowed cavity, and then that was like clouding up and coming out, and the fan was taking it out at that point, where I could just blow it and it would just kind of dissipate. I'm still breathing a little bit out into my mouth, and it's getting in back of my throat, and it just feels like it's giving me cotton mouth because it's like a silicone type of material. So I'll probably just wear a dust mask in the future, but otherwise the smell is not too bad. Now I feel like just with that layer right there, I used about maybe half of the can, okay? Half of the can. It's a 2-pack. So we'll leave that right there. It's very good. I'm very happy with the Kraken. Pretty cool. Now just be aware that it is currently raining outside. Not just raining, it's actually pouring. So if the audio for this becomes distorted in any way, I'll probably go ahead and move into a voiceover, okay? Alright guys, so what I'm going to start doing now is I'm going to start to mix up my plastic to pour, okay? Now we're going to do very small batches at first, and then as we really get things layered in and I'm happy with how it's locking in those details, I'll start to do heavier batches. This is going to be more than enough to do this entire cast, so I'm not really worried about that. We want to make sure that we start to focus on the very top. So we'll start to focus on the crown of the stump and then work our way down. It's imperative that the top of the stump has as much strength as possible, because that is going to be where the bolts are attached for the peregrine falcon's feet to hook into this stand, as it were. So we need to make sure that the very top of the item has as much strength as possible. I'm not going to use any kind of wire meshes or anything in this version of it. I really do have confidence in the overall smooth cast products and the strength that they provide. Alright, so we're going to start off with part number A, and we're going to give that a good kind of shake. And we're only going to do a little bit at a time to begin with. So let's just go ahead and pour the very first notch right there. Let's pour about half of the cup, okay? As I'm pouring this, guys, I'm trying to think to myself, don't spill it, don't spill it, don't spill it, because the gallon jugs will glug when you tip them back with the air. So just be aware, don't spill anything, don't waste material. And I'm just going to mix this up real quick, okay? Very simplistic. Now, this is a fast set. So because we're doing the slush pour, it is a fast set. We want to go ahead and apply it to the interior of the item as fast as possible. So I'll go ahead and give it just a really good circular up here. Make sure you get the bottom so there's no extra, additives at the bottom that just aren't mixed up. Scrape off my stick there, and we'll go ahead and pour this in. All right, so the name of the game with this is to just fill this in and do a slush cast, right? So what we'll do is we'll pour in small amounts at a time until we're just getting happy with the overall buildup. So you can do this a lot of different ways, but basically what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that it fills in all of the areas of the interior hollow cast over and over and over again. And anywhere you want it to build up a little bit extra, you just let the plastic Smooth Cast 300 sit there a little bit longer than the rest of the area. So the areas that are going to get the biggest buildup is the very top of the stump, which is the lower portion of this cast, and the top rim of this, where you can kind of see it gets a lot shallower. That's the dirt foundation around the hollow cast, or around the stump, as it were. So what we're going to do here is we're going to prop this up here. We're going to start off at the very back, right? We're going to start off with the top of the stump. We're going to lock in all of those little cracks and details around the top of the stump. And then we're going to go ahead and build up just a nice thin film around the sides of the stump here. We're mainly making sure that it kind of settles into all of the nooks and the crannies and all of the details that we painstakingly sculpted into the actual sculpture there. So we want to make sure we kind of go ahead and get those blocked in and get them locked into position before we kind of start to be a little bit rougher with it. So as we continue with this process, I'll begin by just giving everything a nice film layer, and I'm using the large pouring cup there. Now, as I start to get into the nitty gritty here, I want to make sure that I go ahead and build up a strong enough layer on the base, or the dirt and rock formation, so that way I'm not worried about it buckling or breaking as I'm pulling off the latex mold after the fact. Because we use the mold making spray, the Kraken, it should help with any kind of pulling and adhesive properties between the latex and the plastics, and it does help quite a bit. It's really easy to remove the latex later. We'll get to that. Now, as you can see, what I've done is I poured my A and my B into these larger cups, and I'm pouring this into a 30-ounce measuring cup here. This is a small measuring cup. Now, I'll burn through a lot of these throughout the process, at least maybe 12 to 15. So I burn through a lot of them, but I will reuse the same cups often, like over and over and over again. Now, I really do take my time with this process because it is fast set. Although it does not take very long for it to set up, you still have to wait a little bit of time for it to set up in each little pour. So here what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and start to pour this, and mainly focus on pouring this around the top rim of this jacket in this latex mold. So every time I pour this into these little, let's just say the rim of the castable item here, it's going to naturally drain down into the pocket or into the stump where it's hollow, and it will slowly accumulate at the bottom of the stump, or at the top of the stump, the bottom of the actual casted material here. Let gravity do its thing. Now, originally, I'm just kind of pouring it in here and letting any kind of residue that sticks over these layers to kind of go ahead and solidify. But eventually, I get to the point where I need to build up some thicker layers here. So I go ahead and tilt up the edge of the mold here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and pour it in small amounts and let it cushion or pull into these little nooks and crannies around the dirt / rock form. But then what we'll do is we'll rotate it, and then we'll move on to the next little section. So what I'll do is I'll continuously do this 30 ounces at a time, filling in all these exterior little grooves and crannies around the exterior edges of the top of the mold here. It's going to really build up a lot of strength in these layers. Now, later on in the process, a little bit later, you'll start to see that as I pour this in, there are no more nooks and crannies for these pooling liquids to settle into. So the only place it has naturally to go is down into the cavity. Now, as that begins to happen, it's not just strengthening the top portion here that we're pouring in, but it's going to strengthen in the interior sides of the stump as it rolls and pours down towards the top of the stump. And fills in and strengthens that bottom part. So naturally, as you fill in these portions around the top of the mold here, it's also going to strengthen the sides and the bottom of it as well. And then as we move into later processes, I'll be using my hand to pull some of that pooled liquid in the very bottom of the mold back up and onto the sides. And as that plastic quickly sets up, because it is fast set, quickly sets up, I will pull that back up to the sides and strengthen the sides by hand. It's not so much liquid that it really causes a very hot heat reaction. If you do a massive pour, then yes, the plastic will heat up an extreme amount, and it can cause burns on your skin or discomfort. So just be aware of that. But when we're really pouring in 30 ounces, 30 milliliters at a time, I said ounces, I mean milliliters, 30 milliliters at a time, it really isn't going to create that extreme amount of heat that's going to really cause burning through the latex glove that we're using. Do I lose a little bit of that material on my latex glove later? Yes, I do. Of course I'm going to lose a little bit of material. But for the most part, I'm able to strengthen the sides a lot better by pulling that curing liquid and plastic back up onto the sides. And that allows me to push it into the areas where I want it to be. And then once it starts to cure up to where it's like sticky and slimy, of course you don't want to touch it anymore at that point in time. But as you can see, to right now, we already have buildup over our latex base that we're working with. So we've already started just to build up all of the plastic into all those little pockets and those divots that we have in the sculpting surface. So here we are, we're continuously working on this process here. I'm going to get a little bit of plastic over the edges. If you have any plastic that you have already cured, like this is the bottom of a medicine cup, I went ahead and just literally pushed that into the curing plastic, and it's going to cure into place. Now, I did that just so that I didn't waste that material, which is always a good thing. Anytime you can save and reuse any kind of casting material, I highly recommend that. Now, also what you'll notice is every time I mix some plastic up with my popsicle stick, I scrape the popsicle stick off inside the mold so I'm not wasting any of that material. Even the stuff that goes off the popsicle stick is enough to fill in a little bit of plastic. Save as much of it as you can, let the plastic do the work for you, and just really take your time and enjoy the process of building up these layers, because that's where the strength is going to come from. Now we're going to do some stuff later on in the process to add even more strength to the bottom or the top of this mold, but we'll get to that later. Continuously pouring in these small 30-ounce little cups here, and then you're going to start to see me doing the pooling with my hand in a few moments. Letting some of that pool down from the base of it onto the sides of the casted mold there. And then I can just get tired of holding up. It's a pretty heavy mold overall, and it's very cumbersome to get it on camera here, but I'm doing my best I can for you guys because I love making content for you. If you haven't noticed that already, I really do. So we're going to go ahead and let that set up for just a little bit as I mix up some more plastic, and then we'll go ahead and pour that into the mold with my hand. All right, you guys, so I often show my mistakes as well as my successes here in the studio during the art processes, unless I'm just like hyper super editing it. Now, what I'm doing here now is I'm pouring the casting plastic into the top rim just as we were before, and you can really start to see that it's really building up, right? So because all of those little like larger divots and voids are getting filled in, it's becoming more smooth. Like there's not as much room for that plastic to just really pool into those locations. So a lot more material is draining down into the stump sides, into the bottom of the cast, right? So it's really starting to thicken up. But the edges of the cast are really still very thin, and they're kind of sharp edges. We're going to come in later and we'll fix that. So just remember, we're going to come back to that later, and we'll kind of thicken that up, and we'll do a different technique for that. Just kind of like a poor man's way of like thickening up the bottom of the actual casting here. So sometimes when I'm moving this around, at least 3 times during this process, I accidentally knock over my medicine cup of casting plastic. My bad. So I have to just quickly like use my gloved hand to like scoop it up and like literally like just scrape it back into the cast here, because I'm not willing to waste that plastic that I just like dumped onto my workstation here. I'm just like, well, it is what it is. If it has dirt or hair or debris in it, like, it is what it is, guys. I spilt it. I'm not going to waste it. I just kind of scrape it up and then just like wipe it in. Yeah, it is what it is. But because of that, I kind of got in the habit of doing this, and I kind of like this process. I'm really taking that existing plastic pour that I have in there that's still active and not solidified, and I'm just gently just wiping it over all of the surfaces. And that really just applies a lot of plastic to a lot of different areas of the item. Instead of me having to continuously pick up the item and then like rotate it to slush that plastic around that's still like becoming solidified over time, I don't have to work so hard to do that. I can just use my gloved hand here, which you can see the plastic is really starting to build up on my hand here, and I can just move that around with my hand. So here we have it back in the studio. Now, don't get me wrong. I went over that quite a bit more with quite a few more layers. And I did not keep account with how much I used in that plastic hollow cast pour. Don't get hung up on that too much, guys, because yours may be significantly different than mine. You may have a smaller item. You may have better coverage. It may be colder or warmer when you're doing yours. So there can be a lot of circumstances that kind of change the variables of your item here. Now, okay, remember we used the Kraken to spray inside the jacket latex before we actually started the casting process. And then here's my gypsum jacket. We're going to start removing this here. Now, this is the hard side, right? This has that big piece that comes up off the top, and this actually cracks again. I'm going to really have to come in and do some massive repairs on this side of the gypsum plaster or gypsum jacket. And what I'll do is I'll probably use some like different like plaster tapes, as well as another layer of gypsum to give it a lot of strength. So we're going to come back over that again later. But for now, it still served the purpose that we need. And I probably would still even be able to get 2 or 3 more casts out of this item before I truly need to fix that again. I did save that content of the first repair, like the patchwork. So I may do that again and like fix it permanently with a lot more gypsum and make it a lot more thick and dense with some different fabrics to strengthen that, like a Kevlar, for instance. Kind of like how you make Kevlar with resins and stuff like that. So we'll come back to that later. Just be aware that I'll admit that did break again, and I'll have to do some repair work on that. So here's me actually separating the latex mold here. So I did not spray any of that Kraken between the two seams of the mold, but I did go ahead and have an easy pull away. It did very naturally just pull away very easily here. You can see just how easy this is. Now, if you don't pour enough casting material into your cast to make your mold, then you get really thin pieces of densities across the whole surface. So you need to make sure you really do give it enough coverage there. Now, we really did make the bottom, or the top of the stump as it were, very thick, because I plan to shoot some threaded rods through those to attach our falcon to it. So just be aware that we made that very thick, and it's for a reason. This portion right here where it has that little concave, like cave hole, it does pull off pretty roughly. It still survived, but it's just very rough. It likes to catch under that undercut. I do have to do a little bit of work to that just to get it out. And when doing so, I need to detach the top part and then pull it down so I could get some better leverage on that without applying too much tension to the latex. Pulling that off there a little bit at a time, you can still feel a little bit of that residue from the Kraken left behind. So I do have a little bit of like a silicone style, like type resin residue, like film left on the item here. Now I do go back in here and I will scrub this down with some Dawn dish soap, give it a really good rinse off a few times, and then it should remove a lot of that residue that's left behind, because it does keep the paint from adhering right away. not to make it or break it as long as the paint doesn't like chip off later on down the road. But I do wash a little bit of that residue off. Now we have a really clean item here, guys. Don't lie. This thing looks absolutely awesome. Now you'll notice that the bottom rim of the base is just very thin. Now I could leave it like this without a doubt, and it would be absolutely strong. But I do believe that what I'm going to do for the Commissioner is I'm going to dress it up just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and thicken out the bottom. We've already thickened out the top just naturally with the casting process, and we're going to do the same process for the bottom. And now a lot of people will use different types of water-based clays or maybe like a silicone sheet. And what you'll do is you'll kind of create a barrier on the inside of the hollow cast, and you can build up material. I don't really have any of that. I have monster clay, so we're going to use monster clay. We use monster clay to sculpt the item. Let's do it again and use it for this. So what I did is I built a dam. Now you can see that I already have those steel rods glued into place with E6000. I let them cure overnight, and now we're going to go ahead and thicken out the bottom base plate of this this casted sculpture here. So this is going to heat up quite a bit. Now with monster clay, the monster clay would heat up with your plastic. So this is kind of like a trial and error. I've never done this before. Never. This is all brand new. I knew that the clay would hold itself into position. And all I needed to do is last long enough for the plastic to cure up into place, and then I can just peel that monster clay away and then just do a little bit of cleanup work. I don't mind having to clean it up a little bit. It's okay. I need to go over it with a fine-tooth comb anyways, do a little bit of Dremel work here and there, sand down the base, make sure it's super flat and level. So I'm not really worried about that. Now, one thing as these layers heat up, because I don't pour it all in one layer, because what I'm doing is I'm holding it with my left hand and holding it level to where I'm only letting liquids settle into it enough to reach the outside lip of the cast here. So we're filling in this little bowl void here while leaving the interior hollow, which is pretty cool. Now here you can see that the clay is heating up, and you can almost see a little bit of the separation between the clay and the actual plastic, because the plastic is heating up a lot. It's not like we're just pouring a little like a 30 milliliter cup like we were before, and it doesn't heat up a whole lot because there's not a lot of material. We're pouring a lot here. Now this creates a lot of heat, so much heat that I can feel it up on my face, and I'm like, you know, a foot away from the item. Now just be aware, as it heats up, the monster clay wants to slide down. We don't want it to do that. I need the monster clay to stay above the grade of the plastic liquid as it's curing up, so it doesn't seep down into the interior of the base here. Now I do hold it with my left hand again, like I said before, so that it gets a nice level surface. I do have a little bit of overhang. I'll do a little bit of sanding on this to get a really flat surface. But otherwise, as we remove that monster clay, we just have a little bit of residue left behind, which is not the end of the world. I will use some Dawn dish soap and some scraping, and I will get rid of all that residue left behind. And here is our casted item here. Now we got a really good cast out of this with the latex that we used from Toxics, as well as the Smooth Cast 300 that I used to cast the item with the polyplastic. And again, that is from Smooth On. Make sure you like and subscribe, guys. Next up in this process, I will be detail painting a little bit of the base coats on this before I start building the armature system for the actual Peregrine Falcon to be on top of this item. Now, as a reminder, you guys, if you want your own type of commission art, whether it be featured here on YouTube or not, I would look forward to working with you. Now, make sure you reach out to me through Etsy or any website that I have open at the time, and we'll get you set up with some awesome artwork. I'll see you in the next awesome crafting video, guys.